foreign exchange, let's talk food and agriculture. As is already known, President Bola Tinubu has proclaimed an emergency, or state of emergency rather, for food insecurity to address the rise in food prices. All right, here's what we got. Food inflation already for July, 26.9%. The governor is planning an agriculture revamp. They say they're going to use fuel subsidy savings to be deployed into agriculture. A national commodity board is going to be created. They're going to have land banks, mechanization, trade facilitation. This list is not even exhaustive, but there's a whole lot more. Who better to join us to talk about food, agriculture, than Chuka Mordi? He is the CEO of Ellah Lakes PLC. Chuka, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So look, you're a player in the sector, you're in agriculture, you're deep, you're across the country. What do you make of this state of emergency that's been declared? And is this for government alone to deal with, or you're a for-profit company, so what can you do? I mean, are you even, help us out?
Well, I think first of all, it is the job of government to try and help the sector and stimulate the sector if they want economic growth. I haven't seen all the details of the plan, but I think there are a variety of things that we all accept the space in which the government needs to try and optimize the sector in order to drive growth and in order to increase food security. I think from what they've been doing in the past to what they'll be doing going forward, fiscal incentives for large-scale processors would be very helpful to grow the space. I think farmer education is very helpful, especially subsistence farmers in rural areas.
Yeah.
I think there are larger macro issues like, physical infrastructure. If you don't fix the road from the farm gates to market, then you have problems with farmers. Even if they're productive, they have to market their goods, they have to sell their goods. So there are other externalities outside just the farming, which are necessary to be addressed by the government in order to try and optimize the agribusiness sector. But I think it's a good start to acknowledge that we have problems and to say, how can we address these problems? So the nature of how they try to address the problem
that's the key. Okay, so we keep referring to this food supply shock list that was mentioned eons ago at a prior monetary policy committee meeting from who the now suspended central bank governor Godwin Emefiele. He made these observations about because he was addressing the increase in food inflation, which has increased since this meeting. So how are you navigating this? A increase in road transportation costs, the security issues in food producing areas, and then legacy infrastructure issues. For you, with your value chain, how are you doing it?
I think from a general perspective, and to speak about the sector and not any particular companies, I think there are aspects which can be dealt with by the companies themselves, and then there are aspects which are for the government to address.
Okay.
So when you talk about legacy infrastructure challenges, you cannot have private companies fixing roads. It's just...
Or if you get tax incentives, because that's something they were doing. They were giving, they would give Ellah Lakes, 5 taxes. Like if you cut your taxes until you bring.
So, like I said, fiscal incentives for different players in the sector to try and optimize the sector.
Yeah.
I think that works. It can work. So, Dangote has got that, and so if you fix the roads, you get your tax breaks, and what you spend is tax deductible, so that makes a lot of sense. How it's implemented is also very important because there's no point in fixing a road that no one uses and trying to get a tax break off that.
Right.
I think they have to be specific about what you're doing and set parameters around how this is going to be implemented.
Yeah.
So there are a variety of fiscal incentives you can use, but tax breaks for fixing roads makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
How it's implemented, I think, is very important.
But I do like what you said, though. Private companies shouldn't be fixing roads.
Ideally, they shouldn't be, but
right?
it is the nature of where we are at the present time.
Yeah.
And the very simple truth is, in order to remedy the infrastructure challenges in Nigeria, the federal government simply does not have the financing to do that. So it has to be outsourced in maybe a PPP fashion, or, like you say, to private sector companies who get tax incentives to do this. But when you look at the specific amount of cash required to fix transport infrastructure in Nigeria, which is roads and rail, the federal government simply does not have the finances. So they have to find imaginative ways of fixing this problem.
Do you think the average Nigerian understands this? Because we've really been trying to get this message across that the government doesn't have much money, but it doesn't seem to be. People will still come out and say, I don't want to turn this into a political conversation, but they're still fix this and fix that and pay for this and do that. And
I think the challenge is, well, one, they have to be informed about the nature of how the economy works.
Right.
And it's about our income versus our expenditure. A majority of Nigeria's income is earned from sales of crude oil.
Right.
So if you have a tax on the pipelines, if you have shut down or shut in production, then the amount of crude oil we're selling goes down, which means we have less income. And it is this income that we spend primarily on OPEX for the country, which is recurrent expenditure, and CAPEX, which is for building roads, rail, infrastructure, and funding a variety of budgets for the different ministries.
Yeah.
So on a per capita basis, I think it's fair to say that Nigeria is a poor country. And
Chika Bono, our last segment, he said Nigeria is broke. I mean, he just so we're continuing the theme.
But effectively, yes.
Yeah, effectively.
That's a different.
right.
That's a different.
You're saying fiscally challenged. A more polite way of saying it.
The charitable way of putting it.
Yes.
But on a per capita basis, we are a poor country, and it's how to optimize what we spend.
But we're the giants of Africa. I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
I think there are a variety of ways to make that a sensible statement. But yes, I think from an asset allocation point of view, we have to be very careful about how we allocate the income we have from our major income producer, which is oil and gas.
Okay, I got to ask you about mechanized farming. I have to, because you're in the space, you spend the money, you import machines. There's a lot of big emphasis on mechanized farming, saying that it will improve yield per hectare, and so on and so forth. Technology and all that. I love tech. We have a tech segment on this show on Friday. But the cost of the machines, they're not made here, they're imported. These things cost, you know how much they cost. It's hundreds of millions. And then training the people to... So is mechanized farming overhyped, or it's necessary, or what? What's the story of mechanized farming?
Well, first, number one is we're not importing any machines.
Are we building them here?
No, I meant personally.
Oh, okay, not Ellah. Sorry, excuse me.
Yes,
sorry, right, in general.
Of machines that needs to be imported because we don't make them here. So tractors, harvesters, heavy equipment for industrial farming, we do not make in Nigeria, so we have to import them.
Right.
And it is correct to say that once you scale up and industrialize your farming, yes, yields per hectare go up and your efficiency goes up significantly.
Yeah.
But the very simple point is, if you want to import equipment, then you have to have dollars because they're priced in currency.
FX.
And we do not have the FX to service that kind of importation at the present time, at least not in any way that makes it efficient for farmers to do.
Yeah.
And even if you had the dollars to spend, I mean, then it's back to asset allocation. Would you spend dollars, your naira, on buying dollars at an exorbitant rate in order to import equipment, which you have to make your money back to service debt or equity which you take to spend on it.
Yeah.
So we're in a very difficult situation.
Like a cycle. Just everything's just, need a dollar.
But there are a variety of ways to fix this. And I think it's important to try and figure out what the problem is and then address the problem in a way that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah.
So you can't have a peg on a currency if you don't have the reserves to defend it.
I think we have can we put up our devaluation list? This is going back to the Obasanjo era, and then come back. We'll put it up in a second. But yeah, talk about FX, because that's a big topic now. There it is. Look at that. There it is. We put that together. That's going all the way. I mean, look at that. That's from 112. Obasanjo in 2002, all the way to now. That's 739. We need to update that because that was as of last Friday. So that's obviously
that's changed significantly.
That's changed significantly since that time. So yeah, I mean.
So I think it presents challenges for everyone in the sector,
Yeah.
and I think people need to recognize that the exchange rate is very significant in the effects it has on people in the real sector.
Yeah.
Simply because we're not a manufacturing nation, most of what we utilize in our day-to-day lives, we have to import. The implications of that is you have to give more naira for the dollar which you're using to buy these things.
Right.
So the price goes up, which is inflation.
Right.
So there's price inflation in goods and services and things you want to import because you don't manufacture them locally.
Yeah.
So there are two the remedies to that. One, import substitution. But to engage in import substitution, you have to have a significant amount of equity on your side. You have to have the space to do it. You have to have the capacity to do it, in terms of human capacity, in terms of the financing to do these things locally.
Yeah.
But of course, you also have to have, depending on the nature of the sector you're in, some degree, and I use those words very carefully, of government protection to say you don't want your market flooded with cheaper imports before you can develop the expertise and the capacity to substitute those things you're importing.
Yeah.
The flip side of this is whilst you're doing this, you need to utilize these things.
Exactly.
So you have to get them
in the immediacy.
Yes.
Right.
So the government has to pick and choose this, or people have to pick and choose the sacrifices they need to make in order to optimize whatever sector they're working in.
Man, this is tough stuff. But it has solutions. It's possible we can get out of it.
There are solutions to these things.
Yeah.
I think bitter pills have to be taken if you're very unwell, because you have to remedy the situation.
Right.
But I think that certain things that we cannot do, we cannot spend inordinately in foreign currency as a nation because we don't have it.
Right.
If oil sales are down, then that's our major source of foreign income. So it means we cannot have a central bank trying to sell dollars at a price that does not make economic sense.
Right.
So at some point you say, well, I don't have dollars as a central bank. Where you can find dollars, go and find them.
Right.
And people who are selling their dollars, their point is simply, you can't buy there, you're buying from me, this is the price at which I wish to sell.
Yeah.
It's called the free market, and that's how these things work.
I see where you're going. There's a buzzword for what you're saying, but I won't use the buzzword because then folks will now start getting in a tizzy. But I hear you clearly.
No, I think there's a very simple logic to how these things work.
The F word, right? Floats.
I'm not embarrassed about saying that seems to me the logical option.
Right.
If you look
Some people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. But see, this is why we bring CEOs and executives who are in the space to tell us what they're seeing on the ground and relay their stories on the show to our audience. And there you have it
for people, but it seems to me the most logical way to address these things. If you don't have the supply, you have to give people who have the supply the opportunity to supply the market.
And they will sell it at the price that the market determines.
Precisely.
That's economics 101. Yeah. 101. I have a wish list for the Minister of Solid Minerals, but you're in agriculture.
Yes.
If you had a wish list for our new Minister for the Agriculture, what would it? Yeah, there it is. I'm asking him to bring in Elon Musk and sign a multi-billion-dollar lithium deal. Also get Rio Tinto and BHP and blah blah. It's a wish list. What's the wish list for agriculture?
To address that particular wish list, you have to have the capacity to do the mining in the first place.
Right.
I don't think these are overnight solutions.
Right.
You have to define the policy you wish to execute. You have to have an implementation plan. You have to implement them properly, and you need the human capacity to implement these things properly. So a wish list is all well and good, but how you...
The reality.
Yeah.
So road to stop dreaming is what you're saying. That's the charitable thing you're telling me right now.
You have to have dreams first in order to articulate your reality. I don't think there's a problem with dreaming. But I think the issue is to understand the nature of one's circumstances and then try to address the problems when you understand your circumstances and how you address your problems.
You know, Chuka, I think you'd make a great professor. You have a real nice way of packaging things, telling people, in very polite terms, how to get real. And this is very important stuff. Very quickly. So 1 minute to go. What is your wish list for the new Agric Minister? What do we have to do there?
I think the potential remedies are fairly obvious, and it's just simply how we deal with them. But I think infrastructure is important. I think farmer education is important. I think fiscal incentives are important. But I think also addressing smuggling in the sector, also a variety of food items, needs to be done in order to give local farmers the chance to actually grow their markets in their sector properly.
Yeah. Would the players in agri space ever go into solid minerals? I mean, stuff is in the ground. You're growing crops and so on. There's solid minerals. Would you pivot there? Oh no, that's not in the strategy.
I think it's wise for people to stick to the
expertise.
Yes. So that's very unlikely in the short, medium, or even long term for us.
Chuka Mordi, I gotta have you more on the show. It is always a pleasure. The rare times that you're on, listening to you share your wisdom. CEO Ellah PLC, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.